Hello, my friends. I'm Ann. I've spent countless hours in my little garden where every leaf, every handful of soil carries the breath of a greener life. Today, I want to share with you not just the science of composting, but also the real experiences, the mistakes I've made, and the lessons I've learned along the way. I believe all of us want to turn our kitchen scraps into something useful, into rich compost that feeds the soil, the plants, and eventually the meals we cook for our families. But to do that, we often have to stumble, fail, and learn. So let's sit together as if we're old friends having a heart-to-heart and look at the 7 worst mistakes beginners make when composting, and more importantly, how to avoid them. Number 1, too many weeds. Have you ever felt excited after pulling weeds in your yard and thought, perfect, I'll just throw all of this into my compost pile? I've done that too, but one morning when I opened my compost bin, instead of smelling that earthy, fresh aroma, I saw a brand new garden of weeds sprouting up. Weeds come with seeds, and if you add too many of them without treating them first, those seeds will happily germinate inside your compost. Imagine working so hard to make rich compost only to bring an army of weeds into your vegetable beds. Scientifically speaking, weed seeds only die if your compost reaches at least 130 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, 55 to 60 degrees Celsius, and stays there for several days. For beginners, it's not easy to maintain that level of heat. My personal advice? Don't get greedy. Dry your weeds out first or compost them separately. Then mix them in a little at a time. That way, you use them without turning your compost into a weed farm. Have you ever thought you were cleaning up, but actually just created more trouble for yourself? Composting teaches us this. Too much of anything, even something good, can become a burden. Number 2, adding meat or bones. I still remember the first time I composted at home. I innocently tossed some chicken bones into the bin. And guess what happened? Stray dogs and even rats showed up like I had opened an all-you-can-eat buffet. Meat and bones don't just break down slowly, they smell terrible as they rot, and they attract pests. From a scientific perspective, the proteins and fats release odors and require special high-heat systems to break down safely. That's why industrial composting facilities can handle them, but home composting can't. You might ask, so is there any way to compost bones? Technically, yes, but only with industrial equipment that crushes and heats them to extreme levels. At home, the best advice is simple: don't. A friend once told me, composting is already hard enough. Add meat and bones and you're just making your life miserable. He was right. Composting works best when we keep it simple, with vegetables, fruits, leaves, and garden clippings, not with things that complicate the process. Number 3, too many citrus peels or acidic scraps. One time, after a family party, I collected all the orange peels and tossed them into my compost. I thought, they're plants too, no problem. But a few weeks later, my compost turned sour, my plants wilted, and the earthworms disappeared. That's when I realized, acid is the silent troublemaker in compost. A compost pile thrives on balance. Too much acidity disrupts the microbes that do the real work. Science explains it simply. Compost works best with a pH between 6 and 8. When you overload it with citrus like oranges, lemons, or grapefruits, the pH drops and the helpful microbes struggle to survive. Does that mean we can't compost citrus at all? Not exactly. You can add a little, just chop it up and balance it with plenty of other greens and browns. Like cooking, it's all about proportion. Think of it like oversalting a soup. Just a little enhances flavor, but too much ruins the whole pot. And here's the lesson. Learning to balance your compost is like learning to balance life. Too much acid, whether in our soil or in our hearts, can harm the very things we're trying to nurture. Number 4, using pet waste. You might think dogs and cats eat food like us. Their poop should be fine as compost, right? I used to think the same. But the truth is, pet waste carries dangerous bacteria and parasites like E. coli, salmonella, and roundworms. If you put that in your compost, you risk bringing sickness straight into your garden and your home. I knew a neighbor who once tried composting cat litter and later used it on his vegetables. His garden looked lush, but his family kept suffering from stomach issues. Only later did he learn the cause: parasites that survived in the soil. Science makes it clear. Only large industrial systems reaching very high temperatures can safely kill those pathogens. Backyard compost piles simply can't. So my advice is firm: never compost dog, cat, or any pet waste. You might wonder, but what about cow or chicken manure? That's different, because herbivore manure is rich in organic matter and easier to handle. Pets, however, are a no-go. Sometimes protecting our garden and our family means learning to say no. Number 5, oily or greasy leftovers. One of the most common mistakes is tossing all your dinner scraps, fried fish, oily soup, greasy rice, straight into the compost. I saw a friend do this once, and in just a few days, his pile turned into a slimy, smelly mess. Why? Oil and grease coat the scraps with a film that blocks air from entering. But composting is an aerobic process. It needs oxygen. Without it, anaerobic bacteria take over, releasing foul odors and even methane gas. Instead of a rich, earthy compost, you end up with a stinky sludge. Think of an old, rancid bottle of oil forgotten in the pantry. That smell, that stickiness, that's exactly what grease does to a compost pile. The best approach? Remove as much oil as possible before adding food scraps. Compost thrives on freshness, not grease. In life, too, we often need to skim away the grease, the unnecessary heavy parts, to keep our minds and hearts clean and light. Number 6, not chopping up scraps first. You might think, vegetables will rot anyway, why bother chopping them? But let me tell you, chopping is a golden rule. A whole carrot can take months to break down, while small pieces can turn into compost in just weeks. Here's why. Chopping increases surface area, giving microbes more room to work. It's just like cooking. A large hunk of meat takes hours to cook, but thin slices are done in minutes. Composting works the same way. A friend once complained, "I've been composting for a year, and my vegetables are still sitting there." When I asked, I found out he was tossing whole cabbages and heads of lettuce into his bin. No wonder nothing was happening. Have you ever grown impatient waiting for your compost to finish? If so, ask yourself, did you take the time to chop your scraps? Sometimes success isn't about big changes. It's about patience and paying attention to the little details. Number 7, not covering your compost properly. One of the most overlooked mistakes is leaving your compost uncovered, exposed to rain and sun. I've done that myself. The result? A soggy, waterlogged mess after rain, or a bone-dry, lifeless pile after days of scorching heat. Either way, the microbes couldn't survive. Think of your compost as a little house. Without a roof, the weather ruins everything inside. A simple cover, a tarp, a lid, or even a basic shelter helps maintain the right moisture level, like a damp sponge, not too wet, not too dry. I once read a study that said moisture is the #1 factor that decides whether compost succeeds or fails. Too dry, and the microbes die. Too wet, and they suffocate. And all of this comes down to one simple act: covering your pile. Have you ever neglected something important in your life only to watch it fall apart? Compost teaches us this lesson too. Sometimes, just a little care and protection can make all the difference. So those are the 7 worst mistakes beginners make in composting, and the lessons I've learned through trial and error. As you can see, composting isn't just about scraps and soil. It's also a mirror of life. Every mistake, every correction, reminds us of balance, patience, and the love for small, simple things. I hope this video gives you the confidence to keep going on your journey of turning kitchen scraps into life-giving soil. If you found this helpful, leave me a comment. Have you ever made one of these 7 mistakes? I'd love to hear your story. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Compost, so we can keep walking this meaningful green path together.